So, what do you think about all these protesters? What's your thoughts on that?
On the protesters.
Yeah, it's funny. I spoke with you earlier, and you said you hadn't heard of any protests. Is that right?
Yeah, and then I kind of went online because I've just been like hiding out in my apartment, and
Right,
I haven't really been checking much news in the last few days because of a death of a friend. So I
right.
haven't
Sorry to
really
hear that.
noticed the protests are happening. But yeah, they're protesting the lockdown, I guess,
Yeah.
and that enough is enough, and they want out, and that's fair. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know. Maybe we have done what the healthcare wanted, flatten this curve. I don't know. I'm still sort of torn between like whether I think it's a good idea to reopen or not. Um,
Hmm.
I
A
don't
lot
know.
of
And
a
that
lot of
could be
a lot of a lot of folks just say that they call it they're like, oh, it's just a flu, and
that it's not. And I think
right,
that's the part of me that's like, yeah, we shouldn't be reopening. And I think because of the lockdown, there might have been a lot of people who did not get infected, and they're just kind of tired of sitting at home alone or at home, period. So now there's talks of like, oh, this is infringing on our civil liberties. But like at the end of the day, this is not just a flu, but doctors are saying that too. Like my own GP I talked to today,
yeah,
and I have a homeopathic doctor as well who I talked to who had said that initially to me that it's just like a flu, so don't worry.
huh,
Um, it certainly did not behave like a flu,
right,
so I have no idea. And that was early on that they were saying that, so maybe they didn't quite understand. But my GP is now the same GP who's like, yeah, it caused you to have some damage in your body. So the last time we had talked,
yeah,
a lot more happened after that to actually worsen it before it started getting better. And so the people who want to come out of lockdown, I don't know. Like, I think it's really risky. It's probably going to create a resurgence of the virus. And I have my own sort of questions like, why do they want to end it so early? Is it because of money? They want to make sure the economy doesn't tank that bad, but it already has, right? Or is it
yeah,
because they do want people to get more infection so we can have a herd immunity? And I've noticed that that concept of herd immunity is just like dropped out of the news. Like no one's thinking about that anymore, and I just don't believe
right.
it, right? So that makes me a little suspicious. And then conspiracy theories are making me suspicious. Again, I don't know. Conspiracy fact is also a thing.
Yeah,
We don't know enough about what this thing is still, and that blows my mind because it's been months. We should know a lot more than we do.
hmm.
But because we don't, I'm a little afraid. I'm going to stay in, despite I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing and not take any more chances because for me it was hell. And
Yeah,
not knowing still how long you're contagious, whether it stays in your body, um, it's hard to know if it's going to come back. Can you get reinfected? Because can it go dormant and reactivate? There's
right.
like so many questions.
Yeah. You were on a talk show, radio talk show yesterday with CFRO with
Yeah.
Co-op Radio.
Hmm.
And I got a chance to listen to it. It was really good. So if anybody gets a chance to, they should uh, um, listen to it because you described certain things. I won't go through everything, but um, I know at the time that we talked, I don't believe I recall you. I know you told me about had muscle spasms, but I didn't realize you actually fell over and you were actually incapacitated and couldn't communicate with um, paramedics at the door. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was that bad.
It was, and it took me, I think, a while to really realize just how bad that was. Um, and I know you and I were talking throughout this illness, but
Yeah,
I became really incommunicative for a while,
yeah,
and I think the reason for that is that happened on the night of the 4th of April, and after that I was just like silent for a week because my doctor, who had figured out what that was, gave me very strict orders not to stress myself out, not to talk too much, not to do a lot of things, like absolutely do not work, because every little thing I was doing was raising my heart rate, right?
Right.
So the heart thing that happened, he, even today when we talked, he said, I looked at your last ECG from like not that long ago, and remember that we realized that you have a very slow heartbeat naturally. Like my heartbeat is like around 54, which is
Okay.
something that athletes usually have, right?
Right.
And I was an athlete for a long time, and I also do a lot of yoga and deep breathing, so my heart rate normally is slow, 54, and I have not seen that come back since this virus affected my heart. So it kind of ranges now between 60 and 107.
Hmm.
And it fluctuates within a matter of minutes. Like today, it's a lot more stable. I'm in the 60s, and I've actually hit like 58, which is more or less normal for me.
Yeah.
Uh, but right after that, like April 4 to now, it's been like a month, right?
Huh.
A month of erratic heartbeat, arrhythmia, chest pains that just would come and go.
Yeah.
Like I could feel it in my body still. And even though doctors were like, it's been like 40 days, it's been this many days, you can go out. Um, I can, but I'm not, because I'm afraid of my heart. Like I'm not used to this kind of fast heartbeat, or this kind of like really unsteady heartbeat. I think I've had mild arrhythmia since I was young, but I wasn't supposed to talk. I wasn't supposed to work. I wasn't supposed to stress myself out. So I didn't do any interviews, even though I had promised a lot of people interviews. They're coming late because of this reason.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well.
to
Yeah.
the point where I would like get up from my couch, go to the balcony, and my heart rate would shoot from like, I don't know, 72 to 107. My
Wow.
resting heart rate was 92 a lot of times, right?
Wow.
And my normal resting heart rate is like 54 to 58.
So it can obviously it created a physiological change in you.
For sure. And I think
Wow.
to people listening, it might not seem like a big thing, because the normal range of heartbeats is like considered to be between 60 and I believe 100,
Yeah. And
more or
yeah,
less,
potentially. Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there. But you, instead of that, you have to think about like, what is your normal heart rate, right? So like, where are you? What's your starting point?
Yeah.
So for me, somebody who has a slow heartbeat of like 54 to 58, to go up to 100, 107 is really scary.
Yeah.
So
For sure, I can totally see
I've been meditating a lot. I've become really really calm in the last couple of weeks,
that. Yeah.
and I
Any
think
any.
that's great. Even though like I'm hella mad at the healthcare system, I'm hella mad also at my place of work for reasons I won't detail.
Yeah.
But you won't see it because I've trained myself to just keep that down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the positive thing is that you're learning meditation, like you said,
Well, there are
and
things I've been doing before, and it's good to just be able to get back into those practices like yoga and meditation,
mhm,
and try like actively not to be so freaked out about it now that I'm like over it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's important also that it's good that you're. I know that when we were talking, there was a few times where I messaged Series 604's producer Damon, and I was like, I don't know if she's gonna make it. The way she's
Shit.
sounding, and
I
it
know,
was
I was scared for a while
surreal.
too. It was surreal.
Yeah, and and not a lot of people were talking about it, and I think what blew me away was that you had gone to a hospital that seemingly was empty, like the hospitals were kind of empty, waiting for this thing. And I thought to myself,
The thing that never really happened.
Right.
And now they're
Eh,
praising themselves because it was all because of our social distancing.
right.
Oh, there's so much wrong with that. There's so much wrong with that. Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, well, you didn't get any information on the enemy, right? And the enemy, if the enemy is this virus, you didn't get a chance to really examine the enemy. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we don't want I don't want to see any nurse or doctor, get infected and get sick. I know that they have families. I
No, I get that
you
too.
know what I mean, right? Like so you,
But like,
but
where's the
yeah,
line, right? Where's the line?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
the first time the paramedics were at my house, I think I mentioned to you that the first paramedic that came near me was so scared. She
yeah,
dropped the thermometer like 3 times just trying to take my temperature, and
yeah,
the other guy wouldn't even come in.
yeah,
And both times I was at VGH, it was empty, and all 3 times I was examined by doctors, they didn't touch me other than to listen to my lungs, and I'm like, wow, this is like a very complex disease or
hmm,
infection, and you're just listening to my lungs and making decisions based on that. Like, that's just.
yeah,
And they tried a lot of times to pin it on other things so they wouldn't have to do anything more. So, like,
right,
night of April 4, when they said, we're going to test you for a heart attack, they said, just so you know, we're not going to do anything else other than that.
yeah,
I'm just like,
yeah,
okay, like, but why? Oh, we don't want to get our machines dirty. I'm like, you really just said that to me. Wow. Like,
yeah,
they're openly admitting that they're going against their oath, which they take as doctors to protect themselves, which is really
yeah,
bizarre. Because one would think that going into this profession, you would be hyper aware of the oath, and I don't know.
yeah, and that you're putting you're at risk for sure. And I mean that makes me kind of think that on one hand that kind of says to me, well, that must mean it's a lot worse than they're saying.
Yeah.
And
You know what?
and
The one doctor that did help me through my illness eventually, right after that interview that you did, my friend Jami, who's a filmmaker, put me in touch with his sister-in-law, who's a doctor out in Rhode Island.
yeah,
Um, and Jami's in Boston right now, and Dr. Syra is one of the doctors that would not do that, right? So when I was telling her play by play my experiences in the hospital, she was just livid. And she's
yeah,
like, "This is a question of your life. You need to fight. You need to." And I'm like, I'm too weak to fight. Like, I not because I
yeah,
am weak, but because I am ill. Like, I
yeah,
cannot exert that much to fight for myself.
yeah,
But my point being, like, there are doctors there who are willing to do everything. And she sends me like photos of herself all gowned up, masked up on her way to work. Like, like,
yeah,
she is really committed to this thing.
yeah,
But there's other doctors who, I mean, I don't know, in BC, I just haven't seen that kind of level of commitment from any doctor. So I have a lot of admiration for Dr. Syra.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure that they're out there.
I'm
Um,
sure they are. I
you
just
know,
can't find any at VGH, I guess. Where I'm, by the way,
wow,
never going to go again.
really,
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
bad of an experience.
That bad of an experience that I have boycotted VGH, and I am suspicious of everything now when it
Yeah.
comes to the healthcare system. And those suspicions will maybe go away with time, but
Hmm,
VGH,
hmm.
yeah, no. You shouldn't be expecting anyone to walk home in the rain with pneumonia, telling them to go manage it, and we can't give you a ride, like that.
Yeah.
Or when I had that heart issue, they're like, it could be just heartburn. And I'm like, really?
Right. Right.
Maybe it's your anxiety. I'm like, I don't have an anxiety diagnosis.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have PTSD, but I don't have anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they also tried to pin it on, oh, it must be angina or a heart attack. But of course, once they did the test, they could see that it wasn't that. And then for them to say, we don't know what it is and just send me home. Like, you
I couldn't.
haven't, like, that's complete lack of care for a patient who you found on the floor, writhing with muscles twitching, unable to breathe. And you're telling me to go home without
Yeah.
telling me what the hell that was. That should not be allowed. Like, you should not. I mean, I wanted to take a stand and say, I'm not leaving this damn hospital until you
Yeah.
explain to me what that was.
Yeah.
But again, I was still convulsing, like my left shoulder. I can send you the video. Maybe I did
Oh.
send you the video.
Um.
I made a video of myself sitting in the hospital wearing a mask and having these convulsions. And then I
Yep.
flipped it around and I made a video of the behind the glass panel where the
Yeah.
doctors were sitting and gossiping and not doing any work. And I was just appalled. Those videos are
Wow.
from April 4. I have them. I'll share them at
Yeah.
some point.
I know a ton of people that are just live on their own and maybe don't have a lot of family to
Mm-hmm.
talk to and so forth. And yeah, I did hear you sent me some information on some folks that had passed away and been found. They were found on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is frightening. So
And there's
if there is a second wave,
yeah, that's gonna be it's gonna be the same. And the thing that I am really grateful for that I'm aware not everyone has is I have a very vast network of friends. And
great.
when
Yeah, yeah.
I was ill, I don't know if my friends know this, but I made a list of everyone that helped me. There's about 30 people on that list that I still have to,
Oh,
and I will.
that's awesome.
Like each
Yeah,
one of those people is going to get something from me as a thank you. Like
yeah,
30 people, it really showed me how many people care. And then there were people like you who we had talked briefly once before related to this wedding
yeah,
photo shoot, and we became friends through this, and you
yeah,
cared. And just those things made such a difference because
yeah.
I didn't feel as alone as I am. I think being someone who lives alone, I'm used to having friends all over the world and talking to a lot of them over Skype and not having people here.
Right.
But during the illness, I was really grateful for that because the people that were checking in were not all local, right? There were people in Boston, there were people in Rhode Island, people in
Yeah,
Newfoundland, people in Ontario and
yeah.
Seattle. Like, it just blew my mind that, who knew that this vast network that I have one day would be like carrying me through this illness, staying
Hmm.
up with me at nights when I can't breathe. So
Yeah,
people can be amazing. I mean, I can also give you a little bit of a sort of a disclaimer that there
yeah,
were a lot of friends, also, not a lot, maybe about 4, who just
yeah.
didn't believe that I had COVID-19.
Right. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
after my recovery, I went to see some of them, and one of them literally looked at me from his balcony and said, I don't think it was COVID-19. I'm like, what? Like, first of all, who are you to judge my experience? And second of
Yeah.
all, who are you? You're not anyone who can speak to this.
Right, right. Yeah.
It made me really angry. And I'm like, wow, like this is also happening. So in one interview, I was asked about whether I'm worried about stigma from people because I've self-declared that I'm presumptive COVID-19. And I was like, what
Yeah.
stigma? Like, what's that? There hasn't been no stigma. Why do we care? And it was a South Asian interviewer, which makes me
Huh.
think that the question came from the obsession in my culture of what will people think? What will people
Oh boy.
think?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
now I'm
Right.
thinking, what are people thinking that if you have COVID-19, that you did something? Like, what have I done wrong that I got COVID-19? What am I being judged for that there's stigma? Like, no, I haven't faced any stigma.
Well, that's clearly superstition, right?
But
Just
I have faced people not believing me, which
yeah.
hurt. But
Yeah.
then I would come back to friends like you and other friends and say, you know what? It's okay. Those are just a few dissenting voices that are going
Hmm.
to figure it out on their own. I can't do anything. I don't have the energy.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
just,
no, there.
my circle
I hope like that's what I when I put the video out this morning. Or
cleared up. I still, even the interview I did for Co-op, when I re-listened to it, I'm like, I still sound very stuffed up. Like, that's bizarre.
yeah, yeah,
This isn't my normal voice still.
yeah.
Because I
Right.
lost it completely. It's so strange.
Yeah,
But the positive is, I think that everything is healable, right? Even this heart condition, which is called
yeah,
viral myocarditis, my doctor said
yeah.
can heal on its own, right? And he
That's
has,
good.
right? So he's waiting for my heartbeat to come down just to see what develops. And it could be that it just won't progress from here and my body will naturally heal from it. I'm really
Yeah,
hoping. But,
yeah,
I had neurological effects, I had hallucinations, I had
yeah,
convulsions, and like all that has stopped. I'm not mentally confused. I can follow a linear thread now. I couldn't,
yeah, yeah,
and I was really scared. My sense of taste and smell, my smell is still fairly gone, but my sense of taste is coming back. So like,
Mm-hmm.
food is becoming a little more enjoyable again.
That's good.
Which is really good because friends would bring me food and then they're like, how was it? And I'm like, how do I tell them that it was really good, except I couldn't really taste it, and that's not their fault.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to some friends, I'm like, I'm sure it's absolutely delicious, and it was to me, but
yeah.
realize that I can't fully taste it, so I can't fully appreciate it. Cleared up. I still, when I, even the interview I did for Co-op, when I re-listened to it, I'm like, I still sound very stuffed up. Like, that's bizarre.
Yeah, yeah,
This isn't my normal voice still.
yeah,
Because I
right.
lost it completely. It's so strange.
Yeah,
But the positive is, I think that everything is healable, right? Even this heart condition, which is called
yeah,
viral myocarditis, my doctor said
yeah.
can heal on its own, right? And he
That's
has faith,
good.
right? So he's waiting for my heartbeat to come down just to see what develops. And it could be that it just won't progress from here and my body will naturally heal from it. I'm really
Yeah,
hoping. But,
yeah,
I had neurological effects, I had hallucinations, I had
yeah,
convulsions, and like all that has stopped. I'm not mentally confused. I can follow a linear thread now. I couldn't,
yeah, yeah.
and I was really scared. My sense of taste and smell, my smell is still fairly gone, but my sense of taste is coming back. So like
Mm-hmm.
food is becoming a little more enjoyable again,
That's good.
which is really good because friends would bring me food and then they're like, how was it? And I'm like, how do I tell them that it was really good, except I couldn't really taste it, and that's not their fault.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to some friends, I'm like, I'm sure it's absolutely delicious, and it was to me, but
yeah.
realize that I can't fully taste it, so I can't fully appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's,
But yeah,
and you know what? But you hit on a point which I know you also brought up in your previous interview. There, is that there has to be some common denominator that everybody has,
right.
um, and so therefore I wonder. I mean, obviously, hats off to call takers like 811, or anybody who's taking the calls, who's gathering that information,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
because hopefully that's being put into a database and it's being tracked.
I think it is
Um,
because they've released, CDC has released further symptoms now, right?
right,
So
right,
something they are somehow tracking that and adding to the list, and it's
yeah,
complicated, I think, because it behaves a little bit differently in everyone.
yeah,
Um, One description of someone, this was something I really wanted to share with you and forgot to. There's another survivor I found who went through a very similar experience than I did.
yeah,
So my friend David at Co-op, who interviewed me for the Pulse, he
right.
connected me to this person, and I think she had described it as like getting an electrical shock in your body. And I'm
Interesting.
like, yeah, that's how it felt the night of April 4. Like I'm being electrocuted, like everything is vibrating from the inflammation.
Yeah,
Um, it's really bizarre. And then I started thinking about like the whole illness and all the symptoms, and I'm like, it just, something about it does not feel natural to me. I just don't know how else to explain it. Like it's like no
huh,
other illness, but it's almost like you were hit with something toxic rather than a virus.
huh.
It felt like that at times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's a certain toxicity that's entered my system.
It's been tricky going out to some of the to cover a little bit of these marches.
Yeah.
Um, I feel obviously I feel an obligation to document some of it, not everything, and and I think everybody who's going on these marches is very well meaning, and I don't.
What is there, I mean, I know this is an interview with me, but I want to ask you, like, what is it that they believe that's making them go out and do this? What do you think?
Well, I mean, from what they've told me, and I don't want to. Hopefully, I'm not misquoting any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they precisely feel like it is a flu. They don't feel it's as serious as it's being touted to be. Um, they feel
Yeah.
that one, even if it's bad, it's not going to cause more of a problem than, like, it's not
Wow.
going to be so bad that, like, they feel that it's worse for us to stay closed than
I can
to put
see
in.
some validity in that because of like what scientists say about how we become immune to things. That we have
Right,
to have exposure, and even some scientists are like, and doctors I've heard say that the masks are not necessary, in fact, right?
right,
So I think
right.
all that actually is being questioned at this point. So maybe it's not just
Yeah,
people being tired of being home. Um,
it definitely, obviously, there is a political element in there,
yeah.
which, again, I, I've got no, real feelings about that. I just,
Hmm.
uh, you know, I just want everybody to be safe, and I guess they really do. Like, everybody who's walking there is they're walking the talk. Um,
Yeah.
there isn't. It's unlike the Vietnam War or any other wars. There isn't anybody, however, protesting on the other side with their own protests saying, you need to do this or that. It's happening
Right.
online. Um, that people are kind of talking back and saying, hey, you should stay home, and you're going to hurt us all, and so forth. But it is the government.
You
I
know why though?
believe.
I think it's partly because like how many months into this now? Like 3, 4 months into this now. I think enough has been said by officials about what we need to do and what we shouldn't be doing that people can now make their own decision. And if they want to take the damn risk, like what can anybody say? You have
Yeah.
all the information, you're armed with everything you need to know. And if despite that you still want to pretend it's just like a flu and go out, that's your life.
Right. Right.
The fact that it might affect other people's lives is what makes it so scary.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, I think that's why people are mad at protesters or against the protest, because they're worried about not so much that person, but how many more people they're going to give it to.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah. And a vaccine is quite a ways away.
I believe that too. It's quite a ways away. Unless some of these conspiracy theorists are right and Fauci has it. I've read so many things.
Yeah. You just and that's another part of the story. That's
Hmm.
another part of this crisis in a
It
way
is. I
is
mean,
that.
conspiracy theories are going to pop up. Doubts are going to
Yeah.
come up. People
Yeah.
are going to have a lot of different opinions on what's what.
Yeah.
That's just
And as
normal.
opposed to the media now, like, the media is so much bigger.
Yeah.
It reminds me of. Do you remember Desert Storm?
I lived through it.
Right.
I watched
Oh,
bombs fall in my yard. I have
were you
PTSD.
you, you were there? That's
I
right.
was it was 1991. Yeah, I was like
Wow.
12 at the time, or 13.
Wow.
And my
Well,
father
that
refused
was
to leave Saudi Arabia where we were
really.
living, and Saudi Arabia got bombed, and a few Scuds did hit, and one of them hit in my backyard, and our wall cracked, and we all fell. And later, many years later, in London, Ontario, I went to an air show where I met two of the pilots who were in the air trying to intercept that missile. Weird,
Wow.
weird story. But anyway, you were talking about Desert Storm for another reason. I got digressed.
Well, yeah, no, that's uniquely interesting. We'll have to get back and talk about that. I want to hear some of your stories if you feel comfortable about it. But
Yeah, I've written poems. I've done some writing about it. I'll share with
oh, good.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the, it makes me think of how when I saw it. So I had seen violence in Cote d'Ivoire when I lived there with my parents, and eventually it was kind of like the build up to the president getting removed. Well, he passed away, actually.
Right.
But the it was a French colony, eventually kicking out the French. Um, so I saw some violence there, and then um, but then I really experienced it. I experienced, like, I think most North Americans, when they saw Desert Storm and they saw the tracers in the air on television, we realized, oh wow, this is different than anything else we'd ever seen. Yes, the Vietnam War had
Mm-hmm.
reporters, and there was visuals of that. You didn't see so much of that, but this huge thing that was going on across the world, you could watch it live. And
And I think it
that,
was like CNN that was doing that, because I remember
yeah,
all of the media being shut down in Saudi Arabia. Like everything was shut down, and the only
Right.
channel you could get on the TV was CNN.
Right.
So what you guys were
That's
seeing is what we were seeing, and I distinctly remember at one point this blonde woman saying, "Well, we've heard reports that Saudi Arabia is being attacked," and we're like, "What? We don't notice anything going on. There's no sirens. Like, what's she talking about?" And
wow.
then, like 30 minutes later, she says, "No, it was a false report." And then is when the Scud landed.
Oh wow.
Like, okay, right. So it was not a false report. So they kept going back and forth on that. Meanwhile, I'm
Wow.
looking outside watching this, and she's saying it's a false report. I'm like, okay, this is so interesting. So the media,
Played a
yeah, when you
role. It
have a
definitely.
media censorship, when you have media shutdowns, not everything
Yeah.
gets out there that needs to be known.
Yeah. But how it's getting out there right now is an explosion of information, either false information or correct
Yeah,
information. And
and
you
everyone
have
has
the
to
main.
judge it for themselves, and that's scary because not everyone is a good judge of that.
Well said. Yeah.
You know, critical
Well said.
thinking is a skill we teach in
Yeah.
university. I teach it in every
Yeah.
class, and not everyone is a good critical thinker.
Yeah. Well, try to make it to the next day, and then to the next week,
Yeah,
and
I'm
then to the next
feeling
month.
really, really okay now, and I appreciate
Yeah.
check-in. I still have a little bit of chest pains here and there, but my
Yeah.
heartbeat's gotten a little more stable. I track it every day, like 12 times a
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah.
instead of going like this, it's kind of more like that. It's still a little high for
Right.
me, but it's coming down.
Cool.
Yeah,
It's
it's
good.
positive.
It's good to see you smiling.
Yeah, it feels good to be able to again. Yeah,
Yeah. True that. True
yeah,
that. Well, I guess that's good. That's good for the interview.
yeah. It's been good talking to you.
It's been- I'm gonna stop the recording button on here so that we're not recording and that I can
Hmm.
talk more freely.